Now, Nintendo doesn't like to focus a lot on story. Usually, they just do something simple and continue working on the gameplay. We see this a whole lot in games like Super Mario, Mario Kart, Smash Bros, and more. In these titles, stories don't matter too much. However, there's one franchise where it's actually incredibly important: The Legend of Zelda. A franchise where story is crucial. Now, sometimes Nintendo does a bit of a bad job at it, but there are also examples of them doing some great stuff. Especially when it comes to cutscenes, they can come up with some amazing ideas. And today, we will finally take a look at those. To be more specific, the 5 best ones seen in the series. Now, let's jump right in. Number 5. Now, there's one thing in the Legend of Zelda universe that always gets hyped up by everyone who talks about it: the Master Sword. The one weapon that can defeat the strongest evil beings seen in the world of Hyrule. And in most games, it has a very important role, which all started in A Link to the Past. Clearly, it's a pretty big deal. And so, when they had to make their first 3D title, they had to make obtaining this weapon very special. And oh boy, they certainly did. First with an epic quest, and then a reveal where most of us got goosebumps. After collecting all 3 spiritual stones, you can finally head towards the Temple of Time, which on its own is already incredible to witness. It's a huge, stunning-looking church, and on the inside it's even more mesmerizing. And when you place the stones, the cutscene actually begins. With all the stones in place, the door opens, building up that hype for finally obtaining the legendary weapon. And in the distance, you can see it. And so, you run for it. And at that point, you really get to see the sword. And I will admit, the cinematography of this cutscene is actually really good. I especially like the pan down. This way you can see the whole sword in detail, while Navi says it's the legendary blade. And then it zooms out to reveal the pedestal and the weapon that's stuck in it, and then she says, the Master Sword. This is an amazing introduction to this weapon, especially because this was the first time ever where players could see it in more detail. And then when you grab it, Nintendo again takes things slowly and adds a lot of special effects, just to make it feel more impressive. Personally, I just love it, and every time Nintendo did something like this, it worked incredibly well. For example, in Twilight Princess, we see a cutscene when grabbing the Master Sword that's very similar. And again, it's impressive and has amazing camera work that really takes its time in a good way. A cutscene like this needs to impress after all. It is the one weapon that can save the world of Hyrule. And I gotta say, in the first 3D game, they already did it perfectly. Even the audio is really fitting, with an almost divine theme in the beginning that makes it feel otherworldly, and after that you get music that builds up to Link finally getting the sword. In general, it works really well. Number 4. Now, as you all must know by now, I think Madras Mask is a gem of a video game. Maybe even the best thing Nintendo has ever made, period. And personally, I think it's all because of the story and atmosphere of the game. It's so incredibly powerful and intoxicating. Now, if you don't know what I mean when I say this, then you just have to start up the game and look at the title screen cutscene. And yes, that's our number 4, a title screen. And that's because it really embodies the idea behind Madras Mask incredibly well. It already starts off very dark and creepy. Everything is black, and you can see Madras Mask slowly spinning and getting closer, and then moving away again. Eventually it transitions using a flash, and you can see the happy mask salesman with the mask, after which he laughs. All of this is already very ominous. There's barely any sound during this section, which is a good thing, because the silence can make you feel a bit uneasy. And then it flashes to Clock Town, where you get to see the whole settlement, kind of getting introduced to everyone and everything. During this time you hear some cheerful music, and all seems well. Link looks happy, everyone else looks happy, it all looks fine. But as time goes on, things become darker and darker. Literally, you go from day to night. And then, near the end of it all, the camera slowly works its way up the clock tower in the center of the village. And the music picks up. Some dark undertones start to build as you get closer and closer to the reveal of the true state of this beautiful little town. An evil mask-wearing villain that looks at its latest creation. A horrifying moon with a face that will destroy everything in a matter of days. Personally, I think this is the best title screen intro Nintendo has ever made because it's so powerful. At first you get introduced to the evil in a way that doesn't really make it stand out. At that point, you are unaware of its power. And then you get to see the town. Everything is peaceful and the place looks nice. But the only reason why they added stuff like this was to show off how unaware the town really is of what is coming. And at the end of this little intro cutscene, the player is confronted with the reality of this odd world. A moon will crash down into town, destroying it and everything around it in 3 days. Unless Link stops Majora, of course. Personally, I really think this intro is a masterpiece. But it doesn't end here. This game has more to offer when it comes to captivating cutscenes. Number 3. When you start up Madras Mask and actually start to play the game, you also get introduced to the game using a cutscene. And this one is also really cool, especially when you know the story behind some of the scenes in it. Now you start off in the Lost Woods, riding on Epona alone. And then your horse gets scared, you fall off, and the Skull Kid is introduced in a very unsettling way. He loots your body, messes around a bit, you wake up, and then try to stop him, resulting in a high-speed chase because the Skull Kid steals your horse. In general, this doesn't matter too much. It's just a simple setup for the story, and only after this chase scene when you jump down the hollow tree, things start to really pick up. This is where it starts to get a bit trippy, and also ominous. Things become a whole lot more serious from this point onward. In a way, it feels like you're falling down into a different dimension. Some sort of hellish dimension, which is kind of the case. So that's already one thing that makes it very unique and cool. It's unlike anything else in the series. After this, Link ends up in his personal hell, with the Skull Kid just floating there. And as soon as Majora starts talking, you know you're screwed, and that this entity is a lot stronger than you think. I also like the Dutch angles they used in these scenes. It's something you never really see in The Legend of Zelda. And then we get to the weirdest part of all of this, the Deku transformation scene, which can be a bit unsettling, which is a good thing in my opinion. It's mostly just weird visuals and Link being tormented by a bunch of Deku scrubs, and in the end, he turns into one. Now the cool thing about the scene is that it was originally a nightmare. Apparently Eiji Aonuma had a dream about being chased by a Deku scrub, and the next day, this man, whose name I cannot pronounce for the life of me, showed him a movie he created for the Deku, which was exactly as Aonuma's dream. And in the end, it ended up in the game, making for one of the most interesting cutscenes in the entire franchise. And of course, after this, Link goes nuts and Majora leaves. Overall, quite an interesting way to start off the game. And I love it. In a lot of ways, it's really unique, creates an amazing creepy atmosphere, and uses some cool camera shots that were never used before that fit incredibly well with the tone they were going for. It's pretty darn amazing. Number 2. Now we move over from something depressing and dark like Madras Mask to a game that is more hopeful, The Wind Waker. And to be more specific, the ending, which I actually like a lot because of how emotional it is. And I mean, the location is also pretty sick. After finally defeating Ganondorf and saving the land, you get an emotional heart-to-heart with the king. He is saying his goodbyes and tells both Link and Zelda to fight for the future of a new kingdom of Hyrule, because the old one will be washed away by the waves. And so the king can't join them, and what was will be gone forever. And in the end, Link and Zelda are saved, while the king of Hyrule is doomed to fall together with his old kingdom, with Link trying to grab his hand in the hopes of saving him, but in the end, that's not the case sadly enough. He remains there to be forgotten by time, and our heroes have to continue to honor him. Now I like this cutscene because it's quite emotional and ends the story pretty well. And I also like the setting a lot. The collapsing sea around you is quite impressive. However, for our number 2, we also have another cutscene, the ending of Twilight Princess, which is similar in a lot of ways. Here you also save the day and kill Ganondorf in a spectacular fashion. And your companion for the game leaves because she doesn't belong in this world. Just like the King of Hyrule in the Wind Waker. And I like both these cutscenes a lot. They nail the emotional setting, especially compared to something disappointing like the ending of Ocarina of Time when Navi leaves. These cutscenes take their time to end things properly. And so because of that, they are among the best in the entire series. Number 1. Now we get to the best cutscene in my opinion, and the main reason why I ended up here is because it really left an impression on me. When I was 13 years old and saw it for the first time, I was so captivated by it that I wanted to see it again, but couldn't, which made me really sad. I'm talking about the cutscene where Lanayru explains how the Fused Shadow was formed by the power of a race of dark magic wielders known as the Dark Interlopers, in an attempt to control the Sacred Realm. First of all, I would love to mention how it transitions to the cutscene. I love it, it's very cool, it's very clean, and an original way of doing so. Now in the cutscene itself, the Light God basically explains what happened during the Hyrulean Civil War, where everyone went after the Triforce, including the Interlopers. And they made the Fused Shadow in order to win this fight. But in the end, divine intervention saved the day, and they were sealed away. Now, what makes this cutscene so cool is that it does visual storytelling very well. And that's all thanks to the fact that it only focuses on a couple of things. The whole cutscene is black, aside from the stuff that really matters. And I also think that the use of Link and Ilya was genius. It shows that the people who turned evil were just normal people. In a way, this is indirect storytelling at its best. It uses the characters that we love to tell the story, and at the end of it all, that choice makes even more sense. Because this story is also a warning for the hero to not mess around with these dark powers without being careful. And in the end, the insanity ramps up, really hammering home the dark influence it can have on Link. He even says, those who do not know the danger of wielding power will, before long, be ruled by it. It's a cautionary tale, and also a very effective one. And as time goes on, it really ramps up. As you can imagine, 13-year-old Wily was mesmerized by this cutscene. And even today, around 10 years later, I still love it. This truly is the best cutscene in the entire Zelda series. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like because it really helps out the channel. Tell me in the comments what you think about the Legend of Zelda cutscenes. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye, kisses, subscribe.